So back when I was a kid, one of my favorite shows was I Love Lucy. I mean, I still watched Saturday night or Saturday morning cartoons and, Friday night and Saturday night cartoons and shows and movies and stuff when they were on. But I really loved black and whites, and I Love Lucy was my favorite. But, I did my video a while back on My Favorite Martian and Wild Wild West. I mean, those were iconic black and whites. I even watched Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, I love the Three Stooges, Our Gang. I just totally liked watching black and white television. Andy Griffin's Show. I mean, come on now, you know. But I am totally a '90s kid, but that's what I loved. But I Love Lucy was one of my favorite shows, And so when I had heard that Being the Ricardos was coming out, I was pretty stoked. I was like, oh, okay, this seems pretty interesting. And so it turns out my girl's dad wanted to watch it. It was one of the only movies he was interested in watching in theaters. So I was like, hey, like, let's throw it on. It's actually streaming, so we don't even gotta go to theater. So we threw it on and watched it, and I gotta say it was interesting. Being the Ricardos follows Lucille Ball and Ricky Ricardo, or Desi Arnaz, and during their turmoil of going through her being found out as a communist. And I gotta say, it was an alright movie. I mean, I wouldn't watch it again. I would rather watch the documentary Finding Lucy because it was a lot more interesting. And yeah, I feel like this movie pretty much kind of, I don't know, tarnished her legacy almost. It just put her in such a negative light over all this communism stuff, and in actuality I feel like she kind of walked all over it. I don't think it really hurt her and was devastating to her as it was portrayed in the movie. Nicole Kidman plays Lucille Ball, and Javier Bardem is Ricky Ricardo, and it's just, I don't know, her portrayal of Lucy was so hard. Like, I know she's supposed to be like the cigarette, like she's the cigarette woman, but for real, like she's like playing old Lucy. She's playing like, it's almost like she's playing '70s Lucy, not young, early seasoned or beginnings of I Love Lucy, Lucille Ball, So I would say my main criticism of this whole documentary movie was that I just didn't really care for Nicole Kidman. Like, she totally just was like a grumpy, older seeming Lucy. Like, she seemed like the Lucy after she takes over Desi's studio Lucy. It just didn't fit. And to be fair, the whole communism thing, like I said, she had put her name of, like, she marked the communism box or whatever, but they even explain in the actual documentary that she did it for, like, her grandfather's sake. Whereas in the movie, yeah, she also says that it was for her grandfather's sake, but the movie tries so hard to make her, like, lie about it. Like, does they make Javier Bardem's character, like, oh, Ricky Ricardo, like, oh, we're just gonna tell him you checked the wrong box, and like blah blah blah, and like she's like, no, like, I don't want to lie. I want to tell them why I checked it, and it's just weird how even the writers said that they were going to change some things about how exactly, she dealt with and Ricky dealt with the communism, fiasco. And it's just like, why? Like, is that what we're at now, to be able to hide celebrities from their political affiliations? So nowadays, and I know terms like socialism and communism are being thrown around, and you're like, oh, okay, well, movies like this need to be made to show that, well, we can't just cancel those people who want to agree with communism or want to agree with socialism or Marxism, because, you could be canceling the next Lucille Ball. They're just saying things pretty much. Like, they don't know. They're just saying things to appease whoever. And it's just like, you know what? Fine. But you didn't have to do that with Lucille Ball, okay? It wasn't necessary. There's so much more aspects to her life that a movie could have been made on. Her time as a B movie queen, going through all these B movies, actually having her first child that no one really seems to think or care about. You could have had it on her doing the Lucy show later on what her life was like after I Love Lucy. I mean, there's just so much more to her life, but instead they decided to focus on the two things that she, like, hated most about her life. They dealt with the communism aspect, which they lied about, saying that, like, J. Edgar Hoover called or whatever, saying that, like, Lucy isn't a communist. Like, that's some bullshit, okay? That never happened. And then the whole her falling out of love with Desi, which of course was like the worst part of her entire career. But it's like they didn't have to, like, center the movie around her, like, dealing with his adultery. Like, it was just so sad, Like, I don't know. I would have rather seen something better. I would have rather seen something putting her in a better light than having her argue with the writers and stuff and making her think that Lucy's dumb. I mean, again, in the documentary Finding Lucy, it is so, they talk about her in so much better of a light of that she was actually funny and enjoyable with the right, like, the writers enjoyed her being there and her input and stuff. And it's just like the movie just made her seem like a total bitch, and it's just like, damn, like, it was just, I felt like there's just no respect, no respect. And don't even get me started on the black and white scenes of her like thinking the thought she was thinking in the scene. I mean, that was just too much. When she's the iconic jam scene, when she's dancing in the jam, like that whole scene, they could have used the actual scenes from I Love Lucy instead of doing this weird black and white. I mean, it just looked horrible. You could see the makeup, like I felt like you could see her makeup more, Nicole Kidman, like it was just awful. Like the whole black and white, all the black and white scenes were just awful. And I'm sorry, but they could have just used real scenes from I Love Lucy, and it would have been so much better and so much more like documentary, and like, since that's what they said the movie was supposed to be, it was like a fake documentary, Lifetime movie almost. It just made no sense. But again, this is a new year, so happy new year. We're in 2022, so I gotta give you some sort of silver lining, right, for this movie, right? And if there was any silver lining, it was that the actors that played Ethel was pretty good, and J.K. fucking Simmons as Fred was fantastic. J.K. Simmons, you can do no wrong. You can play any character, every character. I mean, he is just so great in this movie as Fred, and he pretty much nails Fred's character right on the head. And the girl that plays Ethel, pretty on point too. Like the whole situation dealing with like her weight and her wanting to be more glamorous on the show, and Lucy being like, the show is called I Love Lucy, blah blah blah. Like that whole thing was cool. The dynamic was interesting, but they brushed over it so roughly, and like those allegations aren't even true necessarily. That her contract stated that she had to be like more like 10 pounds over Lucy. Like, it's just like the fact that they put that in is just like, all right, fine, you feminism talkness, but it's just like, it was so unnecessary. So I don't know, being the Ricardos, man, definitely like a 5 out of 10. Shit, like, I half enjoyed it, half just wanted to turn it off at some points. But remember, I was watching this with like, family in a sense, so I'm not just about to start talking crap. I held my tongue, but I cannot hold my tongue no more. I'm definitely an I Love Lucy fan, and I feel like this movie was crap. It tarnished her legacy during her tough time, and I feel like it just should not have been made. But hey, it's a new year, and hopefully they just don't, maybe this was a mistake and they just won't make any more weird documentary movies like this anymore. But other than that, yeah, Javier Bardem was a good singer for the most part. I guess as Ricky, I guess that was something. Lucy, I'm home. Such good times. But yeah, thank you for watching. It's been the Craig Lawrence Experience, and I hope you guys have a fantastic new year. And yeah, have a good one.